Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. A murder probe has been launched after 2 teenage boys died following a stabbing attack in Bristol. The 15 and 16-year-olds were attacked in the south of the city yesterday morning. Avon and Somerset police say a group of people fled the scene by car. Both boys died in hospital early hours of this morning. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested and remain in custody. Bristol Commander Superintendent Mark Reinakers says the investigation has already begun collecting statements.
A murder inquiry has been launched by the Major Crime Investigation Team, and 2 people have already been arrested and are currently in police custody. I'd like to reassure people we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to catch those responsible for this reprehensible attack and provide answers to the victims' families. We're in the early stages of our inquiry, and we've already identified a number of witnesses who we will be taking statements from. If there is anyone who has information who hasn't yet spoken to us, we'd urge them to contact us or Crime Stoppers anonymously.
Now, Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says the UK remains undaunted by yesterday's illegal attack on HMS Diamond. Ministry of Defence confirmed the warship successfully repelled a Houthi drone in the Red Sea. The vessel used her counter-defence system to destroy the drone, avoiding any injuries or damage. This is the 3rd attempted attack on the naval vessel. In other news, the Queen has left the London clinic after spending the afternoon with the King. It's the 3rd day His Majesty has spent recovering in hospital following a procedure for an enlarged prostate. King Charles is said to be doing well after the treatment. The Princess of Wales is also at the same hospital following abdominal surgery. Kemi Badenoch has told GB News she asked the chairman of the Post Office to resign after she realised there were problems with the board. Henry Staunton stepped down in the wake of the Horizon IT scandal. The business secretary said the decision was by mutual consent after she explained to him why new leadership was needed.
They've been having difficulties on the board, and when I looked at it, I decided that given everything that's happened, given the renewed interest, or the new interest in some cases, into the Horizon scandal, we just needed someone different.
Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch speaking there. 2 people have been arrested after protesters threw soup at the Mona Lisa in the Louvre Museum in Paris. 2 women wearing shirts with the slogan "Food Response" crossed the security boundary and began shouting, "Our farming system is sick." The incident came after days of protests by French farmers over low profits and red tape. The Leonardo da Vinci painting, widely considered a masterpiece, is set behind 3 inches of protective glass and was unharmed. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Free Speech Nation.
J.K. Rowling gets a stage play made about her despicable support for women's rights. A museum tries to shift Admiral Nelson's legacy from naval hero to gay icon. And Bob the Builder gets a Hollywood makeover because he's too white, too male, and won't take cash anymore. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Coming up on tonight's show, With Channel 4 airing the documentary I Am Andrew Tate, we'll debate whether his former kickboxer, reality TV star and positive negative influence on today's young men. With colonial statues being pulled down on Australia Day, we'll be crossing to Sydney for reaction to the Indigenous protests taking place there. And in social sensations, we'll have the latest on the Japanese man who spent thousands to live his life as a collie dog. And did he get toilet trained? Find out in a bit. And of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. My studio guests this evening are Bruce Devlin and Francis Foster. Gentlemen, how are you both?
I'm fine. You?
Well, yeah, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah?
That sounded weird, didn't it?
It did sound...
It sounded like I was covering something up.
It sounded like you'd murdered someone.
Yeah.
And absolutely, but you haven't.
I haven't got the strength of personality to do that, mate.
I really think that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think it is, mate.
Did you have a nice night? You were here last night?
I was here, although I've been accused of being out. I've basically been told I look like something that's been caught in a drain.
I saw that. She was like, did you have a good time last night?
Yeah, did you have a good time? And I thought, is you stalking me like the woman in the restaurant yesterday?
I don't... What,
yeah.
Are you stalking him?
No, good.
OK, that was slightly weird. All right, we are going to start with some questions from the audience. Our first question's from Shirley.
Is J.K. Rowling's stance on trans issues worthy of a New York stage play?
Yes, so J.K. Rowling, who this week was named among the list of the top UK taxpayers, top 100, has been attacked for standing up for women's rights in a new show from a Scottish arts company. The play, which will be performed on stage in New York next month, sees the author's surrogate children, Daniel, Rupert and Emma, stage an intervention. Now, J.K. Rowling has endured years of attacks from the trans lobby for her views on women's rights. So, Francis, what has J.K. Rowling ever done to...
Well, she's clearly a Nazi, so, because that's how it works.
Finally someone saying it.
Finally someone says it. What it means to be far right is you write a series of best-selling children's books, which brings joy and delight to millions, and then you say that...
Gets them reading.
Yeah, gets them reading, and then it says that sex is binary and that women deserve their space. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, Hitler had the same thing, mate. You should read his kids' books. They're awesome.
So it's, I mean, this is a play. It sort of was born in Scotland. What do you think of this stuff? I mean, how do they feel in Scotland about J.K. Rowling?
I think some people don't like it because some people perceive it to be a transphobic person, but I've discussed this with Andrew several times. I don't think there's anything on record where she says that she's anti-trans.
Yeah.
I think she has come out and said that she knows trans people, that she loves trans people and things, but she does have different ideas on single-sex spaces.
Yeah, which doesn't... Just because you have those ideas doesn't make you, per se, anti-trans. When you actually ask any trans activists and you say, quote me something directly that she has written or said, they never can.
No, but it's funny because a lot of my gay friends, because I have a couple, there was a game that had come out for the PlayStation or whatever, and I knew 4 of them that were very vocal against her that all went and bought it and just played it in private, didn't talk to anyone about it.
That's the hypocrisy.
So they're the meat-eating vegetarians.
So they were out of the closet and in the closet at the same time?
I know, it's like the 80s all over again.
Yeah. Fascinating. One thing we do know for certain is that this play is going to be rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, and is it also going to be some kind of own goal for trans activism? Because I think normal people, regular people, whatever that means, silent majority, see this as another form of intimidation, another form of bullying against someone who only seems to have contributed good to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing with an intervention is normally done with somebody who has a horrible addiction to some, prescription meds or whatever it may be, or alcohol, whereby you step in to say, look, we're really worried. We think you're going to kill yourself. But she just thinks that women should have protected spaces. Does that really need an intervention from Rupert Grint?
Yeah. I mean, they have all, arguably, those actors have betrayed her.
Yeah.
But do you think, Bruce, that this actually matters to her? I mean, it can't be nice to receive... she has received...
No.
There's websites just dedicated to, which collates all of the death threats and the rape threats she's received. To have someone actually go out of their way and actors to perform this production essentially calling you a bigot. That's not nice, surely.
No, it's not. But then I suppose if she was being intimidated in the way that they want her to be intimidated, or at least that's the perception that I get from this kind of story article, she's not backing down, is she? But I'm sure she will have moments where she's like, is this all worth it?
Well, I think she probably thinks it is. What do you think, Shirley?
I think I'm not really too sure.
Yeah, Shirley doesn't want to get fired, mate, all right? OK, she's got a job. It's not like you, mate. Go on GB News, say edgy things.
We just had a great debate about it.
Right, Shirley probably works for the council. Well, she did until 5 minutes ago, mate. Have a think, Josh.
I actually think...
Sorry, Shirley. Her name's not really Shirley.
Right, no, it's not.
Cut away from her. Cut
away from her.
Right, they're going to have another question now. This one's from Carl.
She definitely doesn't work in accounts either.
Carl, go.
Hello, guys. So, can a black actor portray Winston Churchill?
OK, are you nominating yourself? Or?
I would say... well, I'm not going to nominate myself, because obviously I'm not black, so... But a black person, maybe 90%, they could portray Winston Churchill. But
90%? That's...
90%? Where did that stat come from?
OK, well, let me talk about this.
I don't think 100%.
I don't think 100%, just 90%, right.
Well, this is the actor Danny Sapani's given an interview to the Sunday Telegraph. He touched on actors playing historical roles and the potential of a black actor playing Winston Churchill. He says he wouldn't have a problem with it as long as it worked both ways. So I've read this article, and, of course, what it really is about is the journalist at the very end just slips in a question and goes, what do you think about someone black playing Winston Churchill? Like, out of nowhere, just to have the snippet that's going to then be taken onwards. And what do you think of his response, Bruce? Going both ways? That seems fair enough, doesn't it?
I've gone both ways in the past myself. So
I didn't know. I thought you were purely one-directional.
No. There were a couple of moments, so, yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, at least he's not being a hypocrite about this.
No, I do think that with historical characters, they should be accurate. So, for instance, I don't think a black actor could play Winston Churchill any more than I could turn up and play Winnie Mandela.
I disagree.
Because of the weight issue?
Yeah. You disagree?
Yeah, I think you could.
Really? No, because to me it's all about realism. You've got to believe that actor is the character. Now, because we all know what Winston Churchill looked like. Therefore, a black person, it doesn't strike me as realistic in the same way that a white actor couldn't play Nelson Mandela.
Well, no, because then would they not be accused of... But would they be white at the time, or would they take on the skin colour?
Well, this is something else. If they did take on the skin colour, then that would be seen to be blackface and therefore racist. So I don't see how it could work the other way.
Well, Francis has got a point here. Sometimes when you're watching, certainly historical dramas, when colour-blind casting is put in place, it can somewhat take you out of it. If you're in 15th century England and then suddenly someone who's a person of colour pops up, you're like, was that really that person there? Does it matter to you in any way?
Personally, no. And I know that's not what you want to hear.
No, not at all. No, I want to hear that, of course.
No, it doesn't bother me, largely because, and this will show my ignorance, I went to the Cabinet War Rooms as a child on a school trip from Park Place Primary in Dundee, and I didn't enjoy it. So, not for me.
That's informed your political decision ever since. Right. Our next question's from Amelia. Oh, hello, Amelia.
Hiya. So, should Admiral Nelson be remembered as a naval hero or a gay icon?
Both.
Correct.
Yes. Let's talk about it. So Admiral Nelson is to be reimagined as a gay icon for a museum event. The Queer History Club night event at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich will consider the men who loved him, including close friend Vice Admiral Thomas Hardy, who kissed Lord Nelson's forehead and hands when he died aboard HMS Victory. Nelson's last words were said to have been, "Kiss me, Hardy." Kiss me, Hardy, that's pretty gay, right?
I don't know. Is it? Do you think it is?
I don't know.
What kind of kiss was it?
Well,
with no documentation, this is the whole thing, so I don't understand...
Was it just the natural love that exists between two men serving together in a war?
Well, who knows, because there's rumours about so many famous people, ex-royals who are no longer with us, that apparently were busy in the bowels of Britannia.
With people who were vertically
challenged. Yeah, no, that I was worried.
But what's strange here, actually, is that there are no rumours about Admiral Nelson at all. He was famously, of the time, very heterosexual and very active.
No, he wasn't famously heterosexual.
That's what he was.
No, he was on a boat for months at a
it.
time, surrounded by men. There is not a chance in hell he didn't get stuck in.
Now, does that include everybody in the Navy?
Yeah, that's what he does. You know, it's like when lads go to prison. You know, it's not gay. It's what you do.
OK, I didn't know that. Thank you so much. I have to say that the museum has somewhat backtracked, and they have said that it was... Basically, they said that it was just the friendship of love that can exist between men.
I think that's
and they're
weak.
not saying that he's gay at all.
Well, I think it's weak. He definitely did, and...
So it's an early bromance then?
Yeah, it's...
Yeah. That's a new thing now. I read that in, I think, somewhere like the Metro, that apparently bromances are now a lot of heterosexual males that will sit in each other's houses together naked, kissing, but they're not gay.
They should just go out and join the rugby team, you know? That's what you do.
Please don't tell everybody what happened last night. OK.
She knows.
Our next question for the moment is from Simon. Simon.
Hi, hello. Yeah, so,
beard.
Thank you. You too. So is Bob the Builder too white, male, pale and stale?
Yeah, so this week it was announced Bob the Builder is being reimagined as Roberto in a Barbie-style Hollywood makeover, with the film being produced by Jennifer Lopez. So, Barbie, that came out. They didn't make her Latino or any other ethnicity.
No.
So, is this necessary?
Well, I think what excites me the most about it is Bob the Builder, or what's his new name?
Roberto.
Is he going to duet with Pitbull? Are we going to see that come out? I think that would be quite interesting. I didn't watch Barbie. I don't think that's aimed at me.
OK.
I think you're... Really?
That was a joke.
How dare you?
Stereotype. Are they desecrating sacred British culture here?
What? No, look, Bob the Builder, so it's an American version. Look, I'm half Latin American, so genuinely, I know I don't look it, right? I am half Venezuelan, so all the racist jokes I'm going to do now, I can do because of my heritage. It's fine, just make him illegal. Make him, make him realistic. He doesn't have his papers, slips in the border, does it for half the price. Brilliant.
OK.
Roberto.
You got to... yeah, he goes to Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah, Roberto, and then in his spare time, he makes love to the lady who does the job for him.
Wow, you should... I don't even know why you're here. You should be in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. That's a version we'd all like to see.
There was going to be a Japanese version where they were going to add a fifth finger, because he's got 4 fingers. And because in Japan, Yakuza, they chop off their fingers, so they were afraid that everybody in Japan was going to think that...
How did they chop their fingers off?
It's just what they do, mate.
All right.
They love it. They love a bit of finger chopping.
OK.
Yeah. But the point was they were going to change it because they didn't want these kids thinking it was actually about a bunch of gangsters. And in the end, they left it. They couldn't just leave it here. I don't know. It makes me slightly sad.
I just think it's sad that we always have to have a revival of something. Can we not have something new?
Exactly. Yeah. Why does it have to be based on Bob the Builder? Just have... Yeah, OK, fine, it is Roberto the Builder.
Yeah.
Right, can we fix it? No, we can't. Right, we're going to have a little break now, but coming up, as Channel 4 airs its controversial documentary on Andrew Tate, we'll be debating whether he is a bad influence on today's young men or an unlikely role model for masculinity. Stick around for Free Speech Nation.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prioritise. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with myself, Josh Howie. Now, Channel 4 recently faced a backlash on social media for giving airtime to Andrew Tate with an hour-and-a-half documentary about him. Let's have a quick look.
Andrew Tate, one of the most beautiful people in the world. The real story of Andrew Tate. This is like manic look in his eyes, with new insights and revelations. Fortunately, I was born with a mind that is hard to occupy, and I find everything boring.
The network's feature-length documentary titled I Am Andrew Tate was a behind-the-scenes look at the life of the man who is regarded by some as a role model for masculinity. But Tate's checkered past, I guess, has seen him arrested in Romania for a string of crimes, including rape and people trafficking. He also faced rape claims in the UK a decade ago, although charges were later dropped. Tate has denied all allegations against him. So, is he a healthy influence on young men or a troubling sign of our times? And does he deserve space on our screens? Here to debate, I'm joined by 2 of the country's finest young political commentators, Chloe Dobbs and Jess Gill. The first question has to be whether this man is, like I said, accused rapist, accused misogynist, accused people trafficker. Does he deserve exposure on terrestrial TV?
I think he does, regardless of whether you're pro or anti-Tate. If you're against Tate, then surely you should be glad that he is getting airtime and, say, being exposed. This Channel 4 documentary doesn't really paint him in the best light. It picks out the worst parts of his past. Surely if you don't like him, you'd want that to be exposed. Yeah, fair enough. Do you agree with that? Do you think that let people give them that airtime and they can hang themselves or be judged by their own words? I think there is definitely some truth to that. It's just a shame that Andrew Tate is the only antidote to this society which constantly demonises men. That's a society which basically tells men the only way they can be accepted is if they chop their penises off and call themselves a woman. I think that's why Tate is so essential. But it's a shame. I more prefer characters like Jordan Peterson be promoted. But unfortunately, they're demonised, so a character like Andrew Tate who says F you to the system is needed. Yeah, so do you think that he's more a symptom of the times as opposed to, like, it wouldn't have worked, that shtick? Or, I guess actually that's my next question, is do you think it is an act? Because that's what some people will say about him. I think he plays it up. Even on Piers Morgan's show, he said he plays it up. And on Piers Morgan's show, again, he actually showed Piers Morgan up. I think he actually showed that he is someone for the system. Yeah, I may not agree with everything but what he says, but the core tenets of it, of responsibility, ambition, being a man, I think they're generally good things that what we should promote towards men. It's just a shame that someone like Andrew Tate is saying it. I think more people should be saying it and that they shouldn't be afraid to say it, but unfortunately society has gotten to a place where they are. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he's a very intelligent person. Do you think that it's somewhat of an act, or is it coming from a real place? I'm just reading into it myself. It does feel like there's genuine anger there. So I think that, on the question of is it an act? I think that Andrew will often, he can be quite pompous and he'll often exaggerate what he is saying, whereas if you listen to his brother Tristan Tate speaking, he's often, a lot more reserved and a bit more, has a bit more humility. But at the end of the day, I think that there are a couple of messages that they put across to young men and young people in general that are really powerful and are resonating at a time where I think women are realising that some of the things that feminism has taught them is not really serving them. So, as Jess has said, teaching men how to be real men. I think women are fairly hardwired to want providers and protectors, and feminism has sort of taught men to do the opposite of that, taught men that you should split the bill, get the woman to pay half the bills, whereas the Tate brothers are telling people how to be real men at a time when I feel like men are really becoming quite feminized and becoming very low effort. And then also, I'm a big fan of people being entrepreneurs and people being self-employed, and they are, constantly telling people and teaching people how to escape the 9 to 5 and do something interesting and ambitious with your life. And sometimes they may sound a little bit like conspiracy theorists, where they say, you're escaping the Matrix. But at the end of the day, I think their core message is helping young men, and there's a reason why so many millions of men around the world follow them.
There's a reason why, but, touching upon some of the things you said, yes, he does promote things like entrepreneurship, but at the same time, other people might say he also is showing people how to con other people. It's not coming from a moral position, and certainly exploiting, whether this was in the finesse of people trafficking or not, that's not, I believe, how women want to be treated. And certainly showing that as an example to young men, and I've got a lot of young men, I've got a lot of kids, and they're all boys, 4 boys and a girl. That's not the message that I really want to send to them. I want them to be strong, but I don't want them to talk about women that way and treat women that way.
Yeah, of course, there's lots of things which I strongly disagree with Andrew Tate on. For example, he promotes hedonism, he promotes sleeping around. I think anyone who calls himself a conservative should be against these things. It's not good for women, it's not good for men. And I think monogamy, which Andrew Tate is seemingly against, is actually the way forward. But unfortunately, we're not at that level. The same way I want to talk more about what gender roles are, we're stuck in defining what a woman is. I want to talk about that a man should be a man, and it doesn't just mean an adult human male. It means being a provider, being a protector. And I think we're stuck at this position where we need to just say men need to man up, and then we can go towards things like monogamy, being respectful. I know it should be the bare minimum, but unfortunately, a lot of men can't even do that nowadays. You know what? I think a lot of men, controversially, I think a lot of men are actually quite useless, and it's no fault of their own.
I don't think that's controversial. We've been told that for a long time.
But it's no fault of their own. Society actively puts them down. Society constantly tells them they're useless. And our education system, men are completely falling behind because it's geared towards women. They're told being ambitious, being chivalrous is seen as a negative. So, of course, someone like Andrew Tate, who promotes all these things, who promotes them manning up, taking the responsibility, is seen as a positive.
I guess it's the separating the message from the person and also from his actions. I know that, like I say, I've got a 14-year-old. He's watched those videos. The question is, are they able to separate those different factors to take any positive messaging out there, or are they going to be? Is this how they're going to treat women when they grow up?
Well, one thing I will say is that the Tate brothers have definitely matured over time. I think in the past they were more in favour of, say, sleeping around, but as time has gone on, they've got older and matured. They talk much more about family values and monogamy more these days. And what they are teaching nowadays is to treat women properly by, planning the date, buying flowers, paying for their dinner, holding doors open, holding a chair for them. Simple, gentlemanly things like this that seem to be rare to come across these days.
I agree with everything you've just said.
And those things, surely you'd want to teach your...
But surely there's got to be someone else out there. You guys are young, you've heard of this thing called the internet. That there's got to be someone else out there who manages to provide those messages to younger people to be able to appeal to them without all the toxicity. Do you know of such people?
I'd say Jordan Peterson is the closest, but...
I don't know if my kids are going to get into Jordan Peterson.
I don't know. I think a lot of young people actually really love Jordan Peterson. Like, his main audience are young men. But on the Andrew Tate thing, the core knowledge that a lot of people are taken away. Like, I became an Andrew Tate fan just by going through his reels, going through the reels which are promoted on Instagram, because, again, it's not teaching the more controversial things. Men are just desiring responsibility, being able to be men, pretty much. And unfortunately, yeah, Jordan Peterson is one of those. I think there should be more models like that, but unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be. And maybe it's the media going against that. Like, if you look at a lot of mainstream television, like Family Guy, for example, the dad is absolutely useless, and it's really funny, but unfortunately, we need more strong male role models.
Yeah, I mean, would you agree with that? Is he the messiah for that role, or is he setting the way for someone else to come through who actually might not have all of this baggage with them in their personal life and what they've done?
I think inevitably more people will come through. I do think that the tide is starting to turn on the feminism movement, well, the bad parts of it that I've spoken about, and as more and more men are learning and liking Andrew's message and the good parts of Andrew's message, they'll, with social media, you've got so many people making videos and growing a platform for themselves. Inevitably, people will come through. That might just take 1 or 2 years for us to see. We may not get someone as prominent and as famous as Andrew Tate, but I'm sure you'll see lots of different individual voices across social media. I think I couldn't name many people in particular, but I'm starting to see videos like that from young men.
Coming through.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, something that I think you said just about women telling men. For me, that would just be, because men, we're simple folk. And what we really need is a woman just saying, this is what you should do. And then guys will just be like, that's what my wife does. She's like, behave like this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool, I'll do that. Because then I don't have to think.
I don't know, I would like men to take more responsibility. Again, they have a role to play. With the sexual revolution, for example, which people like Andrew Tate have exploited, where women are encouraged to sleep around, and they don't like it in the end. So many women feel used and degraded by the sexual revolution, and then men are taking advantage of this by just sleeping around. It doesn't benefit men who don't feel fulfilled in the long term, and same with women. And I think that is the issue with that, and I think it lies with men. I think men do need to take the responsibility. But again, like, society has just paternalised them. They've told them, you don't have to take this responsibility, you can just be your own person. When I think a core tenet of being a man is being a father, is being a provider, is being a brother, is being a husband. But we've seemed to neglected that.
Yeah, I mean, would you agree with that? It seems like both of you seem very much in sync about this stuff.
Yes and no. So I think that the way that men's behaviour has changed to, in my opinion, being, much more low effort in dating is partly on the men, but also...
Sounds like you've had some pretty bad dates.
Yeah, I have. And partly on the women. So, as Jess has sort of alluded to, women are, sort of giving men access to their bodies, on the first date, basically. If you don't show a man, no, you need to make more effort, you need to provide, you need to pay for dinner, etc., before you can, have commitment from me, have access to my body, then they will put in more effort. So it's partly on women for accepting low standards, and feminism has taught women to, accept men splitting the bill and, sleep around, let men into your bed when you barely even know them. That means that men are getting what they want for a very low price, essentially.
I feel kind of busted here. What I have learnt from both of you is that I'm very glad that I'm old. And that phase of my life is over. Thank you very much.
Young people have to date older to get real men these days.
Oh, no. Well, that's not me.
Not these Gen Zers.
Oh, really? OK, well, thank you. My wife is not watching this. I hope. Thank you very much.
That wasn't aimed at you.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. To my debating teams, we have Chloe Dobbs and Jess Gill. Thank you. Right. Next on Free Speech Nation, we'll be discussing the Jew-face row at the Oscars, plus why MPs are frantically shaving their beards off ahead of the next election. See you in 2.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, there's talk of ordinary Brits being conscripted to fight in a future war. But with so many of our values being discarded, what exactly would they be fighting for? In My Take at 10, the Tories are in a right royal mess. But a new Prime Minister now would be an insult to the British people. Plus, a military hero tells his amazing story in Mark Meets. My top pundits, the papers, and politics legend Anne Widdecombe. We're live at 9. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later on in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Bruce and Francis, to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com and we will try to answer your issues. Now, our older viewers will remember a time when comedians and impressionists used to put on dark makeup to portray people of colour, and people would laugh. It's called blackface. It's very popular with Canadian prime ministers. Nowadays, it gets called out and criticised, I believe rightly so. So why is it then that in this enlightened day and age, non-Jewish actors can play Jewish roles wearing prosthetic noses and earn Oscar nominations for Best Makeup and Best Actor? I am, of course, talking about Bradley Cooper in the Leonard Bernstein biopic. Maestro, let's take a look at the trailer.
If summer doesn't sing in you, then nothing sings in you. And if nothing sings in you, then you can't make music. Something she told me.
Hello, I'm Lenny.
Hello, Felicia.
That's a big old nose. David Baddiel has been vocal in calling this out, but I think the main point he makes is if it's not OK for other ethnicities, even other sexualities and disabilities, why is it totally fine when it comes to portraying Jews? There's an hypocrisy here. Do you agree, sir? What do you think?
It's really interesting because logically it's consistent, but the reason why people would push back against that is because they say Jews are white, therefore it is acceptable for a white person to play a white character.
So if there's a black guy getting a big nose, playing a Jewish guy, then everything's going to be
Well, black people can be Jewish, a.k.a. Sammy Davis Jr.
Sure, no, of course, I know.
Yeah.
Just being facetious.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
but that is the argument that they would make. You see, what we've got now is we've come into this really tricky point where people are saying that you can only play a role if you have a certain set of characteristics. For instance, if you're a straight actor, you can't play a gay character, when reality is that's hypocritical because gay people have been playing straight roles for donkey's years.
Yeah, so...
So where do we go is the actual truth about it. And the reality is I don't know.
What about you? Do you know, Bruce?
I don't know a lot, and I think I demonstrate that every time I'm on the channel, and I'm quite pleased about that. I think the reason that they've done this is because he's such a recognisable name. Is there anyone who happens... I'm not saying it's right, by the way. Is there anyone who's an actor and openly of the Jewish faith that is as famous as Bradley Cooper? Do you think that's maybe the way the studio
I've heard that there are some Jewish people who become actors.
Right.
They're not all just accountants and lawyers.
No.
Some of them even become comedians.
Right. Are they as famous as Bradley Cooper?
I think there are some pretty... Well, we've got Harrison Ford. He's half Jewish.
OK.
Right. Adam Sandler.
Right.
Plenty of Jewish people out there. But I think, I mean, personally, for me, it's not that it's a massive issue, but to mirror David Baddiel's point, it's the hypocrisy when it is pointed out every other time, and there are big protests when someone portrays a trans actor or portrays really any other ethnicity or that it's made a big deal out of. But yet here, it's just even sort of, if it wasn't for David Baddiel, really uncommented upon.
Yeah, and so that is the point. So it's really interesting when we are having this conversation, because what it does is it highlights the hypocrisies within it.
Yes.
So, for instance, if there was a person playing a trans character, there would be a huge meltdown and people would say, like, we're erasing trans people. But because you've got an actor who is not Jewish playing a Jewish person, look, I think we need to get back to a point where you get an actor and they're playing a character. If they play the character well, that's fine. When it's a case of, for instance, a white person playing Nelson Mandela or a black woman playing Anne Boleyn, that's obviously ridiculous. But everywhere else, I think it's fine, for instance, for a Jewish actor to play somebody who is not Jewish. Do you see what I mean?
No, totally. But I guess it's just you want the same rules across the board.
Oh, absolutely you do.
That would be, which goes to a story about we talked about earlier. But, of course, in this year's Oscars, it's not just... we're not just talking about Maestro. We have Helen Mirren, who plays Golda Meir. She had a prosthetic nose. She was also there. She's also up for the best makeup, her makeup artist. And we have Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, who is Jewish. So...
Did he have a prosthetic nose?
No. Oppenheimer had a small nose in real life. Unfortunately. But also, the other thing, do you remember, I don't know if you heard this story, but the Academy of Arts, motion pictures, they opened up a museum in Hollywood about a year ago, 2 years ago now. And in this museum, there was not one mention of any Jewish people. And Jewish people founded Hollywood. That's just a historical fact. So again, it's just, as you said, it's the erasure of Jewish voices. And I think that's what David Baddiel's saying. I don't have a problem with... Have you seen Maestro?
I haven't seen Maestro, no. I saw Oppenheimer. I thought that was great.
OK, that's it. You think he plays a good Jew?
Yeah, I thought he played top Jew.
You can't tell. You don't know. Cool. All right, so Tory... what's next one? Oh, yeah, Tory MPs are apparently shaving their beards off because they've been told it's a turn-off to voters. One senior Tory who got rid of his whiskers said he took out his razor after party colleagues suggest this beard would put voters off at the ballot box. It's also claimed Miss Thatcher was always a big opponent of beards, which is maybe one of the reasons why she kept hers so trim. Now, looking here, Francis, are you envious of what you see?
Oh, yeah. Whenever I try and grow a beard, it's less Greek god, more Greek grandmother.
Does it just come out little whiskers?
Yeah. It's absolutely... it looks like a woman with a hormonal imbalance. It's dreadful, mate.
So we have some audience members here. We've got some fantastic beards.
Yeah,
here.
Absolutely.
Is there any truth? I mean, is the idea that somehow with a beard you're hiding something like yesterday's lunch, or is that why they're saying this for Tory voters? And I should just point out as well, even though this mysterious Tory MP claimed this, he also said nothing has come out from HQ. But in recent weeks, there has been a bunch of Tory MPs who have shaved their beards.
Yes. I know that Nadine Dorris allegedly was using Yolene to get some hair here. Do we know who the Tory MP is?
No, no. Just someone recently, I imagine, who shaved a beard.
Right, I'm just trying to think of who had one beforehand. What, do you think it's anything to do with, like, looking like a villain, or...?
I think maybe some people think maybe you're trying to hide. I think it could be that maybe it's a youthful thing. Maybe it makes them look a little bit younger, more energetic. And the other factor... that might... I was wondering if being Conservative played into that at all. They wanted this kind of clean-cut image.
Oh.
Do you know what would be actually better for the Tories if they'd run the country properly for the last 13 years? Then actually, Guy, maybe we should shave our beards, or maybe you can do what you promised to do.
Yeah, you know what? I 100% agree with you, but I would like to see Boris Johnson with a beard, or even Rishi Sunak.
Rishi? Really?
Yeah, or Theresa. I'm fine. Yeah. I'll take any leader.
I'd like a well-run NHS, but, you know, we're just different.
Yeah, I'm not so fussed on that. I'd like to see Rishi in full-length slacks.
Yeah.
I hate the kind of crop trousers that
the ankle swingers.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Then he'll get your vote.
Right.
OK, let's have time for some messages, but coming up next on Free Speech Nation, it's time for our monthly culture roundup with historian and writer David Oldroyd-Bolt. See you in 2.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It's time now for our regular look at culture and arts with historian and writer David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, you've been to the Holbein exhibition at the Queen's Gallery, haven't you?
Yes, somewhat later than other critics because I've been away, but this is an exhibition about Hans Holbein the Younger, who was the court painter to Henry VIII. He came to this country first in 1526. He had been in Basel in Switzerland, where he'd been painting mostly religious paintings, but then, thanks to a letter of introduction from the humanist Erasmus to Sir Thomas More, Lord Chancellor later on, and later on executed for opposing Henry VIII, on the Reformation, he came to England, and he quickly, through painting an extraordinary series, or starting of drawings and then paintings of Thomas More's family, became the go-to painter of the day. He was, the celebrity. If you wanted your portrait painted, if you wanted to be recognised as a great and good person of the land, you got Holbein in.
Because they couldn't take selfies.
No,
so they had to get him. He was like
drawing yourself in the mirror is not terribly easy.
So yeah, was he the person? Was he sort of like the version of like the latest iPhone Max? 14 Max. He was like the best of the best.
Well, I mean, he was the celebrity. He was the only real portrait artist of the day, and he was the person, I think, who moved portraiture from what it had previously been, which is to put real people in the figure of, say, John the Baptist or Julius Caesar or Antony and Cleopatra. Instead of idealising and mythologizing them, he painted them as they were and drew them as they were. And this is the point about this exhibition, because here we have the most extraordinary collection of his drawings that's been on public display for 30 years. And it shows you that he was a draftsman of almost incomparable genius at using the very finest lines and the very smallest amount of colour to bring out the person and who they were.
And did he focus on the rich and famous, or did he sort of...
Well, yes, because they could afford it.
Oh, really? But he wasn't just like, oh, that's a beautiful cat.
No.
Or a vase of flowers.
This is a snapshot of the very height of Tudor society, of Henrician society. And in seeing these drawings, what you see is the evolution of that society, because you start with Thomas More and John Fisher, who were both executed by Henry for opposing him on the divorce from Catherine of Aragon and the the removal of the church from the control of Rome. And then you see Anne Boleyn and Thomas Howard, who were both later executed for having an affair. Anne Boleyn was, of course, the reason for the Reformation. Then you see Jane Seymour, the queen who Henry is supposed to have loved the most. And in her picture, painted when she was a year from death, which of course she didn't know this, but she died in childbirth, you see the innocence of the woman and her unease with the position in which she's found herself. The pursing of the lips and the set of the brow show very clearly, just as any picture would, any photograph would, that this was a woman who didn't really like the position in which she'd found herself, but she knew she had to carry it through. It's the most exquisite piece of drawing. And then later on you have his grand set pieces, which were painted as murals in Whitehall Palace, but sadly were burnt down in 1698. But these copies made by other artists and these sketches that we have show that this was a work of art well to the equal of any great mural, or any great roof painting, such as the Sistine Chapel. And it's a great shame for English history that it's lost.
And, I mean, it sounds like you're obviously a massive fan and you recommend people get out there and check it out.
Well, you've got until the 14th of April to go see it. It's at the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace, and it will take you only an hour to go round, but I think for anyone who has even the remotest appreciation of the beauty of drawing, and anyone who wants to know what English society looked like in the mid-16th century, spend that hour, spend that £19, which gets you back in as many times as you want.
Did they have teeth? They had their teeth?
Oh, yeah.
Painted those teeth in?
Well, again, they were rich, and it was before sugar was really widespread.
Although it has to be said that as you told that story of all the people that he painted, it was a bit ominous that they all died shortly afterwards. I'm just saying, it could have been a curse.
Well, the curse of Holbein.
Yeah. Sticking with the royal theme, I hear there's a play about the late Queen Mother, and it's been given an unusual trigger warning.
Yes, it says this play was set in 1979 and they thought things differently then.
Oh.
The past is a foreign country, they do things differently there. Isn't it tedious that every time now you see something in public that represents historical reality, people have to be warned about it? I think you can judge the quality of a country's confidence and intellect by its public announcements. For instance, if you walk through a railway station here and you listen to the announcement, you would think that this country is entirely made up of juvenile idiots. And if you walk up the steps at Paddington Station, hold the handrail, don't look at your mobile phone, don't have a drink, be careful. And you think this is just another one in that chain that must make foreigners think, what has happened to Britain? There's a play in the West End at the moment that warns people this play contains the handling of cooked eggs. It's Python-esque. You expect John Cleese to walk on and do it in a stupid voice. Are we now such an infantile society that we can't accept that things happened differently 40 years ago, that we can't accept that they may have thought things then that we don't think, and that perhaps clashes with the way that we think things are now? And I think, is this coming from the playwright? Is this coming from scared producers who think that maybe someone's going to sue them? Is it coming from the theatre, who, again, are afraid? Or is this just a massive overreaction of all three? I mean, do you get this on your shows?
No, well, obviously not here. The whole point of the channel was set up to to combat all of that. But you're right, and I think arguably it's all of it. You know what it is? It's people acting ahead of time, anticipating something that actually hasn't happened.
Yeah.
No one's complained that it was set in 1979 and things are different, but they're so timid now, these gatekeepers, that they are making the problem worse themselves.
Well, I agree. For me, part of theatre, not all theatre, part of theatre, is supposed to be to provoke, to shock, to entice different thoughts, and perhaps the idea that, oh, that was different, maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong, but you have to give people the kudos that they're intelligent enough to have that internal dialogue. And I think so many of these announcements, so many of these trigger warnings are either, as you say, anticipating an offence that practically nobody would take it if it were not pointed out that they might, and is treating the audience like absolute fools. And if I were going to that play and saw that, I would feel rather offended at the announcement.
It's treating them as fools, and then we become fools. David Aldro-Bolt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That is the end of the first hour of Free Speech Nation, but don't go away because there's a lot more to come between now and 9 o'clock. See you shortly.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got rain pushing across central areas through the next 24 hours, which could be heavy at times. The wind's starting to ease a little bit. Looking at the bigger picture, it's this area of low pressure which will bring the heavy rain to parts of Wales, northern England as we move through into Monday, but it does clear into Tuesday. For the rest of Sunday, clearer skies across Scotland after a windy day and exceptional temperatures, record-breaking, in fact, close to 20 Celsius here. Overnight, we can see that rain across parts of Wales, northern England, setting in to the south of this. Fairly mild, 6, 7, 8 degrees. A touch of frost under the clearest skies for Scotland, where we will be greeted by some sunshine to start the day, but parts of Wales into northern England, it's going to be a grey, dull day. Outbreaks of rain, which will only turn heavy as we move through into the afternoon. Some localised flooding is possible. Some wet snow over the high ground too. Cloudy to the south of this, mild highs of 14 Celsius. Sunny Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Temperatures near average for the time of year, 6 or 7. Monday's rain will eventually clear through Tuesday morning, but leaves a legacy of cloud across England and Wales. Sunny skies for Northern Ireland and Scotland, and the wind picking up across the northwest later on. And here, temperatures near average for the time of year, still fairly mild under the cloud further south, turning wet and windy in the north as we head into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel. Come and join me this Thursday in Scunthorpe live by scanning the QR code or going on gbnews.com to get your ticket for the event. We'll be discussing things like why the Green Agenda is risking jobs in places like Scunthorpe.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Sophia.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. A murder investigation has been launched after 2 teenage boys died following a stabbing attack in Bristol. The 15 and 16-year-olds were attacked in the south of the city yesterday morning. Avon and Somerset police say a group of people fled the scene by car. Both boys died in the hospital in the early hours of this morning. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested and remain in custody. Bristol Commander Superintendent Mark Runacres says the investigation has already begun collecting statements.
A murder inquiry has been launched by the Major Crime Investigation Team, and 2 people have already been arrested and are currently in police custody. I'd like to reassure people we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to catch those responsible for this reprehensible attack and provide answers to the victims' families. We're in the early stages of our inquiry, and we've already identified a number of witnesses who we will be taking statements from. If there is anyone who has information who hasn't yet spoken to us, we'd urge them to contact us or Crime Stoppers anonymously.
Now, police are investigating the cause of a huge fire in Liverpool city centre. It's after a major incident was declared yesterday amid fears a 4-storey building on Fox Street could collapse. It was downgraded after 12 engines helped to tackle the blaze, which had been extinguished by 5 p.m, according to Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. Merseyside police confirmed there were no casualties reported in the incident. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says the UK remains undaunted by yesterday's illegal attack on HMS Diamond. Ministry of Defence confirmed the warship successfully repelled Houthi drones in the Red Sea. The vessel used her counter-defence system to destroy the drone, avoiding any injuries or damage. This is the 3rd attempted attack on the naval vessel. In other news, the Queen has left the London clinic after spending the afternoon with the King. It's the 3rd day His Majesty has spent recovering in hospital following a procedure for an enlarged prostate. King Charles is said to be doing well after the treatment. The Princess of Wales is also at the same hospital following abdominal surgery. And 2 people have been arrested after protesters threw soup at the Mona Lisa in the Louvre Museum in Paris. 2 women wearing shirts with the slogan Food Response crossed the security boundary and began shouting, "Our farming system is sick." The incident came after days of protest by French farmers over low profits and red tape. The Leonardo da Vinci painting, widely considered a masterpiece, is set behind 3 inches of protective glass and was unharmed. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Let's get some more questions from the audience. Our first question is from Mansell.
Should boarding schools be allowed to allow trans people to stay in dorms of their preferred gender?
Yes, so should boarding schools allow trans pupils to stay in dorms of their preferred gender? Now, schools, including Taunton School in Somerset and Bedales in Hampshire, say transgender pupils could be allowed to stay in accommodation according to their chosen gender. The school's policies clash with the government's first-ever guidance for trans pupils, which states that pupils must sleep in dorms segregated by their biological sex. So, I mean, they're breaking the law, right?
Yeah, it seems to be that they're breaking the law. And look, this is a really, really important subject, because when a school takes on a pupil, it doesn't matter if it's for day, if it's state or if it's private, they're in the role of what is known as loco parentis, which means in the role of the parent. And as a result of that, that means that they have the care for the child. And it is really important that not only do they protect the child, but also the other children. And what is going to happen is that there's going to be, some people are going to see that as a loophole, and that's going to put certain children in danger. It simply can't be allowed to happen.
Yeah, and we've seen in America where trans students have been using female spaces, female toilets, and females have been attacked. And then it's been covered up by the school board. Surely when someone has their appendage still, they shouldn't be allowed, and certainly teenagers, in that space.
Well, I see what you're saying, but then where do you put... If this, I don't know, so say the child identifies as a female, and that's the gender that they've chosen, but they still have whatever... Where then, if they don't want to be in with other males, and they're not allowed to be in with other females, or it's prescribed that they shouldn't be, where do they then go then? Do you have a third dormitory then for trans people?
I guess, you know, but you know what? This is a very valid question. Personally, I think, yes, there probably should be a third dormitory. But it's these kind of questions that are required, and unfortunately, it's these kind of questions that have been banned by the trans activists over the years of #NoDebate, which is when we should have been talking about all of this stuff, but because it is about maintaining a balance between the two sets of rights, the rights of the other pupils and the rights of that particular individual. And it's another interesting case here where we're also, which was what we've seen a lot with the trans movement, there's a lot of privilege involved. You're not seeing this stuff really occurring in Africa and other places around the world where people are surviving. You're seeing this in very posh schools. You're seeing this in the children of the wealthy, the children of the famous in Hollywood. Is trans essentially a privileged position?
Well, look, I think the trans people have always existed. There's always been gender dysphoria. There's people who suffer from it. We actually interviewed on my show Trigonometry, we actually interviewed an employee of ours who actually has gender dysphoria. So it's a very real thing. And it is a registered psychological condition. And as a result of that, if you are in loco parentis, it is the role of the school to be able to accommodate the child as best it can. But that also has to take into account the other children as well. So the reality is they will probably need to have a third dormitory.
Yeah. And the reality is, you know, they're going to implement this, and I really hope that no one does actually get hurt.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be too late. Right, our next question's from Casey.
Oh, hi, yeah. It's, can a 4-year-old decide what sex they want to be?
We just can't escape this topic, can we?
Yeah, it's a similar topic, but I've got a 3-year-old grandson. I actually am a bit concerned that it's actually a relevant question. I don't even think a 4-year-old should be thinking about it, but it's more parents trying to put labels on male and female, to be honest, so...
Yeah,
That's my question.
Yeah, so the question, yes, can a 4-year-old really know what sex they want to be? Now, this is because the Church of England primary school allowed a 4-year-old boy to join as a girl. Now, the child's sex was hidden from classmates who were described by parents as traumatised when they found out. Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, and Kemi Badenoch, the Women and Equalities Minister, are both understood to be concerned by the situation and have pledged to intervene. So, this doesn't sound good for the Church of England primary school. And do you understand why these children might have been traumatised?
I suppose my thing is, right, I always knew, and I'm not saying this is a throwaway joke, I always knew that I was gay from a very young age. So I think the thing that we have to take into consideration, but then also when I was small, when I was at nursery, I was convinced I was an Austin Maestro and I was convinced I was a dog. Now, I'm not taking the mickey here, but genuinely, and my mother indulged me, I think, just to shut me up, and I used to get to eat jelly out the bowl, and I was very happy. I did grow out of that. I think I did wear dresses at nursery, but, you know, that was...
Are you going to grow out of the gay thing, or...?
I don't know. I'm quite fond. Anyway, my point being is I would have hated for anyone to have intervened in that. So I think when you hear about things like this, you know, should it not all be kind of means tested? And I get that people are worried about, you know, other children's security and all that kind of stuff, but shouldn't we have more, you know, people that are qualified to, like, enter into a discussion about it with the parents and the child?
Yeah.
Because the child's feelings might be valid.
That's true, but this stuff... I understand that in a very rare set of cases, it does come from the child at a young age, but there's also many other cases where it's very much obvious that it's coming from the parent, and it's very enforced. And you can see these videos, particularly from America, where the mother and son, daughter are talking, and it's just like they're just brainwashing them.
Well, this is where, and unfortunately, there have been a lot of cutbacks to CAMHS, which is a child and adolescent mental health services, but where they should be actually getting involved. There should be an educational psychologist, there should be a psychiatrist to come in to look at this child and ascertain actually what is happening. Because children say a lot of things, and they say things which are the top of their head, and when it comes to sex and gender, they don't really know what the difference is between a boy and a girl. If you asked a 4-year-old what's the difference between a mummy and a daddy, they would probably say mummy has long hair and daddy has a job. Do you see what I mean? But they literally say things like that. And so they have no concept of gender or sex. So to think that they do is what you're really doing is putting an adult brain on a 4-year-old child.
Yeah, and they're stupid.
Yeah.
Yes? Oh, sorry.
My grandson thinks he's Spider-Man.
Yeah. But your grandson is Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, in his mind, he is.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying, just leave them alone.
Absolutely, and let them grow. And, of course, the other thing is that a lot of the time it shows when these children grow up, they have autistic tendencies. Yeah. Also, they may well be gay. And just because they want to play with dolls, some parents go, oh, well, that means that this child is now trans. It's like, no, they're just playing outside of the different norms. My son, when he was 4, he's now 6, played with dolls, his bigger sister, and he liked to play with her dolls. It was fine. He put a dress on or whatever. It didn't mean that he was trans. He was just messing around. Yeah. It was fine. And it was when he started putting on my dresses that there was a problem.
Yeah, exactly, because he did look better than you in them. But no, the reality is, when it comes to kids, especially at that age, childhood is a place where children should learn and they should explore. And it's a process of coming to understand who you are in the world. And with the fact that, you know, somebody can say, a little boy can say, I'm a little girl, which I'm sure little boys have said that for millennia. And the fact that we now take it seriously, instead of just ruffling their hair and go, of course you are, Timmy, off you go to play.
And off you go to play, and you go to a different school, or you go to a school now, and then everybody has to accept you as that fact, and with what they can see with their own eyes. It throws their own questions about what sex means and what... Anyway, our next question is from Michael. Hi, Michael.
Yeah, thanks. Should a Ukrainian woman be crowned Miss Japan?
Depends how fit she is. So, should a Ukrainian woman be crowned Miss Japan? Now, a woman born in Ukraine has sparked controversy after being crowned Miss Japan. Karolina Shino, 26, from Nagoya, I hope that doesn't make me sound racist, became the first naturalised Japanese citizen to win the pageant. She moved to the country when she was just 5 years old after her mother married a Japanese man. She describes herself as Japanese in both speech and mind. What do you think about this? This is quite an interesting one.
Does she have all her fingers, going back to what you were saying earlier?
Is she Yakuza?
That's the first thing that I thought, would she wear
there she is
evening
there.
gloves? Yes. Yeah. I don't know if she's a naturalised citizen. Should she? Should she not?
Well, I think the complaints from nationalists in Japan is that she isn't of Japanese ethnicity. And the question is, how much do you define the ethnicity as Japanese? She argues, and there's a valid argument there, that it's a mindset because she grew up in Japan, went to school in Japan, speaks Japanese. Supposedly part of her judgment was about how her calligraphy and by all counts, she has a Japanese mindset.
Well, Japan is a fiercely nationalistic country with very strong ideas about what makes somebody Japanese, and it is tied to ethnicity. So just to make that absolutely clear. Now, as someone from the UK with a Western mindset, I would say that she is Japanese. She has lived the majority of her life, and certainly the majority of her childhood and adult life in Japan. She speaks a language. She's a Japanese citizen. She might not be ethnically Japanese, but she identifies as Japanese. She has lived in that culture. She's a part of that society. So to me, she should be able to represent her country. And here's the other interesting thing. I'm sure if, let's say, she was a different sex and maybe she became a footballer with world-class footballing ability, would the Japanese Football Federation say, oh, you can't represent Japan? Of course they would. Okay. That is an absolute load of nonsense.
So when it comes to self-interest... then, it's an interesting one. Is it any indication, do you think, Bruce, of Japan opening up and slightly becoming less nationalistic? Or maybe they're just kind of following this Western idea of progressiveness and this is how they're doing it?
It could well be them kind of opening up and trying to change their image. That could be it in a nutshell.
Yeah, or she could just be a particularly beautiful woman. What a crazy...
that yesterday.
OK, our next question is from Francesco. Hey, Francesco.
Would Rishi Sunak make a good Scrooge?
Yes, OK, would Rishi Sunak make a good Scrooge? Now, Ebenezer Scrooge will be portrayed as a Tory who hates refugees in an upcoming adaptation of A Christmas Carol. The director said her misanthropic Tory lead will be played by an Indian actor and suggested that the film could be continued as a critique of Rishi Sunak.
No.
Now, you're sighing here.
No, of course not. He doesn't have the personality to play Scrooge.
Oh, what, Rishi doesn't?
No, of course not. If you think about, when has Rishi ever been interesting? When have you ever actually listened to anything he says and goes, oh, yes, please? No. Scrooge, whatever you think of him, is a strong character. There's a flavour to Scrooge. You know what he thinks. Does anybody here know what Rishi thinks?
Do you think they'll have HS2 in it as the Polar Express, because it's a Christmas-themed thing?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure he'll be able to handle a quill, because he's unable to buy the correct size of clothes, so I'm not sure he'll be able to write with ink.
Exactly. No, I think it's absolutely rubbish. I hate this. Oh, they're a Tory, so they're evil. Blah, blah, blah. It's such unimaginative writing. If you're going to have Scrooge, cast somebody who is Scrooge-like. Don't cast someone who is a bland, third-rate management consultant.
Yeah, just to make a political point.
Yeah.
A cheap political point.
Yeah,
arguably.
a cheap political point.
Yeah.
No.
And is it racist to get, like, an Indian and go, that's because they're an Indian, thus they must be Rishi Sunak? That seems slightly counterintuitive to me in terms of being progressive.
Well, I think they might be hiding behind that. Why don't they just say we're making it, it's a parody and he's our aim, if you see what I mean?
OK, well, if they're getting someone... It sounded there like, as opposed to getting someone to portray Rishi Sunak, they were just getting an Indian go, oh, and it could be Rishi Sunak because it's Indian, but we'll see it when it comes out. Our final... Or, actually, I'm not going to see it at all. Our final question is from Oshin.
Hello.
Hello.
Are theatregoers becoming too sensitive?
Well, we kind of talked about this earlier, didn't we? Yeah, theatregoers becoming too sensitive. Sensitive theatregoers watching a new production of Antony and Cleopatra have been told it shows discrimination towards black women. A trigger warning on its website says the play features misogynoir references. Did I say that right? Misogynoir references. A combination of misogyny and noir. This week, a play about the late mother, the great Queen, Mother Queen, also issued a trigger warning saying it affected its attitudes, language and conventions of 1979. We heard about that earlier. We have talked about this a bit. Did you see the argument? What do you think?
Is this about Backstairs Billy? Yes, because that's the Queen Mother thing. Yes, because that's the bit I'm interested in, being an old queen myself. Because the Queen Mother does deliver that famous line, I don't know about you queens down there, but this queen wants a gin and tonic. Obviously, things are going to be different if it's portrayed in 1979. Why do people get so scared of history? I'm not saying that any of it is right, and if you take offence, that's completely up to you. But that's you taking offence. You know, we're not living in those times anymore, whatever the problem is in Backstage, Billy, and in Cleopatra.
It's
It's just absolutely infantile. Like, you go and watch Antony and Cleopatra and you're offended by what? The language? Are you not more offended that they had slaves? And they had armies that killed literally thousands upon thousands of people? It's so ridiculous. I actually start to despair, genuinely. If this is real, or, as it seems to me, it's always just going to be one or two people who moan about everything, and they've just tried to moan about this. The majority of people, I believe, go, it's a play, it's from a long time ago, it just reflects the social mores of that particular time. I think we can all get it.
Absolutely. Right, next, I'm going to be giving my take on Sir Keir Starmer and what he needs to do to win this Jews' vote. This is Free Speech Nation on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Radio.
I recently heard an interesting theory about Margaret Thatcher, that great villain of my 80s childhood in a family that worked for the Labour Party. I haven't been able to verify it, but like all good stories, why let truth stand in the way of making a point? When Thatcher first got into power, she was still connected to normal life and people, and as such, her policies were more tempered to reflecting their concerns. But she remained in power longer and longer and on the throne, and she became ever more isolated, to the point where the only people in her life were politicians, who don't really count, and her gay hairdresser, who was very right-wing. As a side note, I'm not sure how his being homosexual is particularly relevant, but that's how it was told to me. Maybe it adds flavour. Anyway, with her hairdresser, gay or not, probably gay, becoming her only connection to day-to-day life and concerns outside of the Westminster bubble, he was her only sounding board. And whether he just reflected back what she wanted to hear or influenced her with his own politics, her policy started to get more extreme. Now, the moral of the story is, obviously, that we should only ever have bald leaders. However, we are most likely about to get a new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, and he has an enviously fine mane of hair. And my concern about him is that even at the start of his office, he's going to be disconnected with an extremely left-wing gay hairdresser, figuratively. Now, I know a couple of people who know Keir Starmer, are part of his posse, and they all say he's a very nice guy, a good person, which I'm sure is true. Rishi Sunak's probably also a nice guy, albeit one whose immense wealth serves as its own disconnect. But it's not Starmer who concerns me, per se. It's those people that I know who surround him. However you want to label them, woke, progressive, the Be Kind Brigade, the North London liberal elite, and no, they're not Jewish. When it comes to a catch-all phrase, the culture wars, they don't know what they're talking about, and they are very, very out of sync with the rest of the country. I believe they're the reason that when the silent majority finally was becoming aware of some of the issues raised by trans activism, with a double rapist, intact male sent to serve in a female jail, with the fairness of women's sports being compromised, with basic scientific truth under threat, Keir Starmer was still making ridiculous statements like 99% of women don't have a penis. Even then, even when some basic reading and research into these issues would blow apart the incoherent arguments of trans activists and the valid concerns of women, he still didn't get it. And then this week, Starmer gave this speech.
In its desperation to cling on to power at all cost, the Tory party is undertaking a kind of weird McCarthyism, trying to find woke agendas in the very civic institutions they once regarded with respect. Let me tell you, waging a war on the proud spirit of service in this country isn't leadership. It's desperate, it's divisive, it's damaging.
Now, apart from that all being a bit of a waffle, and frankly, massively hypocritical, it's evidence that either because of his advisors or his friends, Keir Starmer still doesn't get it. Yes, the economy is more important, and health, education, crime, national security. But let's not pretend that the madness we've seen take over our institutions these last years, that have permeated and arguably had negative impacts on our economy, health, education, crime, national security, don't matter. Critical race theory, trans activism, decolonisation, corporate wokeism, authoritarianism, BLM, cancel culture, diversity, equality, all disseminated and adopted under the best of intentions. Yet very few people in power remember, under a Tory government, bothered to read the small print. And the thing is, these concerns about our freedoms and fairness and increased intolerance under the guise of tolerance are outside traditional left and right politics. Yes, of course, there are those on both sides of the political aisle and their respective champions in the media, including some on this channel, who utilise them as a means to make political points against the other side. But that doesn't invalidate the initial point. When the Tories bashed Corbyn's Labour for anti-Semitism, that wasn't in itself evidence that anti-Semitism didn't exist. Personally, I think Starmer's been pretty solid on anti-Semitism. From how toxic the party was, it's been an incredible turnaround these last few years. Yet even though Corbyn may be gone, there's still many of his ilk, too many, more obsessed with the regional conflict 3,000 miles away than their own constituencies. Just yesterday, with Holocaust Memorial Day, Labour MP Kate Osamor took the disgraceful action when writing to her constituents of adding Gaza to the list of genocides, an insult to those, particularly the 6 million Jews who were murdered in an actual genocides. She and a bunch of Labour MPs should be nowhere near the party, nowhere close to the levers of power. At least now, though they are in the minority, and at least Starmer seems to have them somewhat under control. But still, being unable to trust all elements within the party, that makes his role as leader that much more vital. So, what about Starmer himself? There's a lot I like about him. I like that he wasn't handed everything on a plate like I was. I like that he got to the top of his profession through hard work and determination. I like his moral stance on many issues. I like that the far left hate him with a passion, which shows he's doing something right. I like that he's got the Labour Party to a place where it can win, and I like the possibility, maybe naively, that they could make this country better, or at least not any worse. That's what I think most people want, for this country to be better and a bit fairer for everybody. And I want to be able to vote for Labour to make that happen. I couldn't in the last few elections for obvious reasons, but I voted for them before, always. And then things happen, like Rosie Duffield being bullied, and she doesn't get any protection from the leadership at all. Then stupid speeches like this week happen, and we're back to square one. Because there are people rightly scared of what a Labour Party could do if in power. What taking the knee means when a few years later the Black Lives Matter organisation is found to be rife with corruption and posts in support and celebrates the actions of terrorists who mass raped and murdered their way through a music festival. What pushing for more stringent lockdowns means for long-term educational prospects of our children. And the answer is we don't know. Now, in my world of board games I play at home, what Starmer has been doing is called turtling. He's hunkering down, gathering his resources, letting everyone else fight it out to win it all in a clean sweep at the end. It's a valid strategy. But who exactly is going to emerge at the end? Because this week's speech, as he poked himself out of that shell, is not inspiring. So if I may be so bold to offer some advice to Keir Starmer, and I'm not saying to listen to me, I'm just a stand-up comic who tells knob gags. But please, stop listening to those around you and start doing your own reading. Read Helen Joyce's Trans. Read Hannah Barnes' Time to Think. Read Andrew Doyle's The New Puritans. Maybe you won't agree with what you read, but at least you'll be better informed and at least you'll make up your own mind. At least when you give speeches on such matters, you'll speak with conviction rather than sound like someone trying to hedge their bets. Otherwise, someone else like Kemi Badenoch, someone who knows her stuff, who speaks clearly in a way that the majority of this country understand and agree with, will destroy you. Because make no mistake, there is a culture war going on. And if you continue on this path, you will lose it. And then we'll all lose. And just to be safe, maybe also get a new hairdresser and with a little colour tinge. So, Francis, what do you think? Can Keir Starmer be trusted?
No, because you can't really trust any politician.
That's true. Let me add a caveat then. As far as you can trust a politician to make lives better, do you think that he's just sort of saying stuff that he's saying just to kind of get elected and then maybe he'll actually take a stance on some of these issues in a positive way?
Well, look, let's look at his track record, for instance, on anti-Semitism. He has actually been very good on that. He has actually dragged Labour towards the centre and made them a more electable force. Mm-hmm. The problem is the rot within the far left and within the left itself with some of this nonsense. You do wonder, is the left itself compromised? And does anyone within the Labour Party, outside of Rosie Duffield, have the courage of their convictions to actually stand up and challenge it and tackle it head on? Because the other issue that we've got is the Conservatives who talk a good game but do nothing. So the reality is we've really got the worst of both worlds here.
Well, I would argue that the last election was the worst of both worlds, but certainly for me anyway. But, I mean, what do you think here? Do you think Keir Starmer will be able to stand up to that far left?
From what I've seen, probably not. I would rather that it was someone like, dare I say, Emily Thornberry that was in charge, because she seems to be...
No. But not for me.
Oh, OK, that's fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you.
You triggered me!
No, please, go and see Cleopatra. I just find it bizarre that you're grey-bashing when you've got two salt and peppers, and he's a salt and pepper as well. So do you think he should really colour his hair? Because look what happened to Cliff Richard.
Well, I'm glad that we've solved it with hairstyles. Next, we're going to be crossing to Sydney for an expert's view on this week's Australia Day protest and whether there's a growing movement to ditch the nation's colonial past. This is Free Speech Nation. What is it? I don't know. I can't even say it. Free Speech Nation on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Priority. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Tens of thousands of Australians took to the streets to protest this week against Australia Day. That marks the arrival of European colonists more than 200 years ago. The public holiday is held every January 26th every year. For most Australians, it means a day off work, a barbecue and some test match cricket. But for others, it's contentious. They say the date marks the arrival of Europeans who heralded the start of a centuries-long campaign of cultural genocide. Joining me to discuss this from Sydney, please welcome columnist for The Spectator, Alexandra Marshall. Hello, Alexandra. Now, can you quickly sum up what the issues are here?
Well, our problem is that Australia Day is loved and celebrated by the vast majority of Australian citizens, and it has always been the case. Most people consider Australia Day to be a lot of fun. We go out, we celebrate, we have all these activities on the harbour if you're in Sydney. It's a wonderful time. And I was down in Sydney Harbour dressed essentially as a walking Australian flag. It was great fun. We had all the tourists were there. It was a wonderful event. But if you go to Melbourne, an extremely left-wing enclave down there, we have the usual group of Marxist Indigenous activists, which is a tiny minority, backed up by the university class who pick up any protest banner they can find, cheered on by the Labor and Green MPs and senators who are looking for relevance in race politics. But the bulk of the people who marched down in Melbourne were not Australians. They were the same people who picked up the Palestinian flag and marched through our streets, who marched through your streets, and shout things like destroy the state, the colonies must fall, this kind of thing. That's why they were holding Palestinian flags in one hand and Aboriginal flags in the other. If you looked at that crowd, they were majority the same people as the Palestinian protests we had there last weekend.
Isn't there an interesting thing, though, where a lot of Indigenous cultures support Israel? I know that in New Zealand you have the Maoris constantly doing the haka, and is that the same with the Aborigines? Because Jews are indigenous to Israel.
Well, we don't really have polls like that in Australia, or at least our press won't cover it, so we can't really tell you. What we do know is that the last referendum we had only at the end of last year, the majority of Indigenous people voted with the majority of Australian people to reject race politics in general. So this movement of separatism, this movement that hates Australia and wants to destroy the state, is a minority movement being backed up by the million-odd people we import every year who have no affiliation with Australia and are there waving foreign nation flags, who support mainly the Marxist movement, not an Australian movement.
So this is a left-right issue. I guess that also reflects slightly a young-old issue as well. But it's not about the political parties per se?
Well, Labor doesn't seem to mind bringing in socialism and Marxism by any means possible. They are playing somewhat of a Ponzi scheme with immigration in Australia at the moment. So they ignore some of the terrible things. Like, we had people shouting gas to Jews on the street, and our politicians did and said almost nothing. And just before Australia Day, we had our statues and monuments being attacked. We've got a photograph there on the screen. And we've heard nothing from the Labor Premier in Victoria about this after the first press conference. We've had no follow-up from Prime Minister Albanese about this. Instead, they made sure they arrested that one bloke who wrote Happy Australia Day on the side of a Coles shopping centre. That's the guy they went after, not the people who film themselves destroying our statues of Captain Cook and these monuments, which appear to be the same person. And these were all reblogged by large accounts on social media who were Free Palestine accounts. So it's all caught up in this modern movement. Just like with Black Lives Matter, when you had that going on, the Free Palestine movement is stirring up the tiny group of BLAK self-named activists that we have here in Australia.
So roughly, how split is the country? You said it's the Melbourne-Sydney split, but how is that reflected? Is it extreme minority who are pushing this, destroying the statues, protesting, or is the feeling larger than that?
Well, over the last, 2 or 3 decades, the Marxist Indigenous activist group, and it is a minority, has not really changed much in size. They've been bulked up by some of the universities. Students who, as you know, they like the Just Stop Oil, the climate change protesters, they pick up any protest they can. But the core group hasn't changed, and certainly the Australian demographic hasn't changed on this issue. What we have done is imported an enormous volume of people who do not have any interest in Australia, her history, her laws, her people, or her culture. And they like any activity that destroys or changes the way people feel about the state. And you have it on your streets in the UK just as we have. The only difference is that we had Australia Day and they used that to hurt us, whereas you had the last War Memorial Service, they used that in your case. They use anything they can that has a national cultural significance to our nation. They tag onto that and they try and use it to divide the nation.
So you mentioned the sort of moral cowardice or silence of your political leaders. How had these protests been received in the wider society? Because I know within the UK, I truly believe that there is a silent majority who sees people with these flags calling for genocide in Israel of Jews. But, you know, you have your own flags, your own posters. Is there a silent majority there who's just sick of this, who's had enough?
Well, we saw that in the referendum. I mean, the referendum, they told us, was overwhelming support for racial issues and for establishing a racial bureaucracy inside Australia. Every single state and territory except for Canberra, which is our political centre, said no. So, and it was not just a slight no, it was a no, we don't want that at all. since they did things like destroy the Captain Cook statue and say things like the colonies will fall, cook the colonies, things like that, the response on social media has been a complete change. Anyone who had lingering sympathies for things like the Palestinian cause has now lost all sympathy because of the way they are treating our history. Because let's not forget, Australia is one of the most peaceful histories in human history. Every single nation has its problems, but Australia, comparatively to the rest of the world, is a lesson in freedom and democracy, peace and prosperity. And so to be called all these horrible things by people who just arrived and who are standing aside and holding the flag of a terrorist state and saying, we like this better than Australia, Australian citizens have had enough of it, quite frankly.
Fair enough. Well, I think UK citizens feel the same way. Alexandra Marshall, thank you so much for joining us. When you do next come on, could you please wear your Australian flag outfit? That would be appreciated.
I will do my best.
Good, very good. OK, thank you very much there. So, coming up, soup is thrown at the Mona Lisa, a clown robs a petrol garage, and a man dressed as a collie takes a dog agility test. Yes, it's time for social sensations. This is Free Speech Nation on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is time for Social Sensations, the part of the show where we look at what has been going viral this week on social media. First up is this video. This week, climate activists at the Louvre Museum in Paris decided to throw a canned soup at the Mona Lisa painting, shouting, "Our farming system is sick." They're sick. What do you think? I mean, this stuff... I mean, I know you got angry earlier when you saw this clip in the news.
Yeah, I'd throw soup at them, but still in the can.
Because that... yeah.
No, seriously, I would. I mean, honestly, I'm sick of it. If it's not artworks, it's plays, it's whatever, and all it represents to me, I understand that they have a calling or a cause, but that is so negated now, because they just come across as entitled, privileged, and they're obviously from a privileged background, because they seem to be able to turn up anywhere. You don't really hear of them having a job, you know, hi, I'm going to, you know, lie.
When you hear them interviewed.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're turning up on planes wearing Just Stop Oil T-shirts. I mean, they're twits.
And they're twits. And the stupidest thing, of course, is that it just backfires against their message.
Yeah.
People just hate them and then sort of go, well, I'm going to drive my car more, put the heating on more.
Well, the issue is that I'm sure there's very real problems with farming. I don't know anything about it, but I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's problems with farming, etc., just like there is with the oil industry. But unless you have got reasonable things that can be introduced and ideas to implement, then what are you doing? You're just throwing soup over a painting. It's utterly pointless. And it's not even converting anyone. No one's going there watching them throw soup and go, do you know what? Changed my idea on farming, that did.
Yeah.
No one's doing that. Yeah. It's completely moronic.
I mean, and the fact is that art, it belongs to humanity.
Yeah.
It's, I honestly don't understand it at all. Next up is this video. OK, it turns out that clowns are the new criminals in town. Now, for those listening on GB News Radio, the clip shows a man dressed as Pennywise running into a service station in Brisbane in Australia, striding up to the cashier and pointing a gun in her face before leaning over and taking cash from the till. A 39-year-old man was taken into custody this week. Yes, what a disguise.
Well, I mean, number one, you're 39 years old and you're dressing as a clown. Grow up, mate. I mean, look, if you're going to do something, at least do it with a bit of dignity. There's a balaclava exists for a reason.
Yeah, and the other thing is that clowns, you know, they make a huge amount of money if they started doing, like, children's entertainment.
But that's the thing. If they actually typed into their market, why don't they go as Just Stop Oil people? That would be good.
It's like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
And hopefully the cashiers would have a load of tins of soup when they come in thinking, nah, you're not on, and just throw them in the eyes.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Finally, nowadays you can identify as pretty much anything. You can fulfill your dream of being whatever you feel like. And in this man's case, it's a collie dog. Take a look at this. Now, regular viewers will know we've been following the story for a while. Known only as Toko, the dog lover spent more than £12,000 on a lifelike costume to fulfill his lifelong fantasy of becoming an animal. However, all the money in the world wasn't enough to pass his dog agility test. He's a fake dog. Now, that is some very rubbish agility there. Now, is it true that a Church of England school will be accepting him as their mascot, as a real dog?
I've no idea, but that did look quite realistic.
Oh, the dog looks fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't move at all.
Yeah.
No, well, maybe it's tired.
But it is amazing. Like, he has done this very clever thing there. I mean, that looks like a dog.
I mean, it does.
I would eat that dog.
Yeah, you would...
In certain countries.
Yeah, OK, absolutely.
Look at it.
I mean, that is only in Japan.
Only in Japan, yeah.
And then it's probably going to be in Hoxton as well, in all parts of East London in a couple of years.
This is it. So why does he want to do the agility? I mean, and also I wonder to what level he really takes this in terms of how he eats his food, how he
I think he
the
takes
toilet.
it quite seriously, mate, just looking at him.
It's got to be a sexual thing.
No, it's Japanese.
You think that's what it is?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Is this the next episode of...
No, the thing with the sexual thing, it's just a pup mask and a tail shoved up your bahookie.
There you go.
Didn't know that.
You're not into
and I'm
the
glad
fur.
you used Japanese terminology
Thank
as
you.
well, mate.
Thank you very much for our expert there, Bruce.
Yeah.
Now, the final few minutes, we're going to talk to you and assist you through your unfiltered dilemmas. Our first dilemma is from Keith. I've recently bought an electric car. It's great. I love it. But some people I work with tell me I'm a sheep who follows the crowd. Your thoughts? I think Keith's rich, right?
Yeah, number one, Keith's minted. And number two, if they ask you for a lift, tell them to sod off.
That's it. Well, he won't be. It probably doesn't work anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think? I mean, what kind of friends? If someone bought, I don't know anyone who's got an electric car. I don't know I'm rich enough for that.
Well, I do. I know a couple of people that have got them, and they think they're great.
Okay, so would you get one? Do you drive?
I do drive, but I wouldn't get one in Scotland because we don't have the infrastructure, and I don't think we will for a good few years yet. So, although I'm due a new car, no, we have electricity. Although I am due a new car at the end of this year, it will be a combustion engine as opposed to a. I just couldn't be bothered with the charging.
Yeah,
Right.
fair enough. Do you have any advice for him? What to say to his friends?
Oh, yeah, but I can't broadcast.
Pipe down.
Tell them to pipe down.
Fair enough. Our second dilemma is from Lee. And he said, is it just me, or does Lewis Schaefer look like Jeffrey Epstein?
Oh, my
now,
God.
this is a disgusting anti-Semitic conspiracy theory here. There is a lot of similarity. There is, and
that is quite offensive to Jeffrey Epstein.
What's also interesting is that Lewis turned up.
No.
After Jeffrey Epstein's mysterious death.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
A bit of, I'm just saying, a bit of surgery.
Yeah.
He's coming on stage. They're talking about the same stuff. Lewis is always inviting me to his island.
South London does not count as an island, Josh. Number one, and I doubt Jeffrey Epstein put photographs of raw steak on his Twitter.
Fair enough. Okay, it might not be him then, but I think Lewis might persuade us that it is him.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So, yeah, I don't. Do you think he'd be offended? I think Lewis would be.
I don't know what would offend Lewis. I think it'd offend him if you told him he didn't look like Jeffrey Epstein.
But, you know, the good thing is that he could... You know, he's an actor.
He is.
So, I mean, this could be the shoo-in. He could be...
Do you think he could be in the biopic?
He could be, yeah, and at least this time they wouldn't have to get some sort of Jew face on.
Right, OK, so no nose needed.
Yeah, it'd be totally legitimate and absolutely fine.
OK. Fair enough. I won't be watching, but good luck with it.
He's right back there, so he's going to be loving all this.
Yeah.
OK, very good. Well, thank you very much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when a 4-year-old boy started school as a girl. A Ukrainian woman won Miss Japan, and Tory MPs started shaving their beards because they think that will win them the next election. Thank you very much to my panel of Bruce Devlin and Francis Foster. I know you want to say you got a gig this Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday, 31st of January, the Etc. Theatre. It's always great. Come on down.
Yeah, he hasn't booked me. And to my guests, Jess Gill, Chloe Dobbs, David Oldroyd-Bolt and Alexandra Marshall. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience here, you can. Please go to www.sroaudiences.com. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's next. And thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Good night. Have a great weekend.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got rain pushing across central areas through the next 24 hours, which could be heavy at times. The wind's starting to ease a little bit. Looking at the bigger picture, it's this area of low pressure which will bring the heavy rain to parts of Wales, northern England as we move through into Monday, but it does clear into Tuesday. For the rest of Sunday, clearer skies across Scotland after a windy day and exceptional temperatures, record-breaking, in fact, close to 20 Celsius here. Overnight, we can see that rain across parts of Wales, northern England, setting in. To the south of this, fairly mild, 6, 7, 8 degrees. A touch of frost under the clearest skies for Scotland, where we will be greeted by some sunshine to start the day, but parts of Wales into northern England, it's going to be a grey, dull day. Outbreaks of rain, which will only turn heavy as we move through into the afternoon. Some localised flooding is possible. Some wet snow over the high ground too. Cloudy to the south of this, mild highs of 14 Celsius. Sunny Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Temperatures near average for the time of year, 6 or 7. Monday's rain will eventually clear through Tuesday morning, but leaves a legacy of cloud across England and Wales. Sunny skies for Northern Ireland and Scotland, and the wind picking up across the northwest later on. And here, temperatures near average for the time of year, still fairly mild under the cloud further south, turning wet and windy in the north as we head into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend.